Problems using distance between 2 points. Here is the first problem we want to solve. Find the distance between point 1 at 2, 3 and point 2 at 7, 7. The problem analysis. This is a type of problem that can be solved using the Cartesian plane. Now, let's look at the solution. Plot each point on our Cartesian plane. Remember, the coordinates represent the distance along the x-axis and the y-axis. P1 would be over 2 and up 3, giving a coordinate of 2, 3. P2 would be over 7 and up 7, giving a coordinate of 7, 7. Now, find the distance along the x-axis and the y-axis from point P1 to P2. P1 has coordinates of 2, 3, and P2 has coordinates of 7, 7. The line will represent the distance that we need to find. Determine the distance along the x-axis. This is called the x-component. Started at 2 and ended at 7, the length of this line would be 5 units. Verify this by counting the units from 2 to 7. Now, determine the distance along the y-axis. This is called the y-component. Started at 3 and ended at 7, the length of this line is 4 units. You can verify this by counting the units from 3 to 7. Determine now the distance between P1 and P2. 5 units, 4 units, and the length of the line from P1 to P2 is what we're trying to find. We will use the formula, the length squared equals the x component squared plus the y component squared. Taking the formula, the length squared is x component squared plus y component squared. Substitute 5 for the x component. Substitute 4 for the y component. This would now give us 5 squared plus 4 squared. 5 squared would be 25 plus 4 squared, 16, which would then equal 41. Now, finding the square root of the length would give us the square root of 41. State the conclusion. The length of the line joining point 1 with coordinates 2, 3 and point 2 with coordinates 7, 7 is the square root of 41. Now, let's look at problem 2. If you drove 8 kilometers north and then turned and drove 5 kilometers east, how far are you from your starting point? The analysis of the problem. This is a type of problem that can be solved using the Cartesian plane. Illustrate this problem on a Cartesian plane. We drove 8 kilometers north, turned east, and drove another 5 kilometers. How far then are we from our starting point? Shown in our diagram by the blue line, the distance from the starting point. the information that's given. The x component is 5. The y component is 8. What is required to find the distance from the starting point? Now, what formula should you use? The formula will be the length squared is the x component squared plus the y component squared, which would give us the x component squared, 5 squared of 25. The y component squared is 8 squared, which is 64, which 25 plus 64 gives us 89. The length then would be the square root of 89. State the conclusion. The length of the line that represents the distance you are from where you started from is the square root of 89. Now it's time to practice the Cartesian plane.